So how do we actually come up with a good sketch? And how do we do it consistently? From my experience, there are 3 crucial things that will make your poses both more dynamic and more interesting. Number 1, twists, bends, and stretches. Dynamism comes from movement. So if we break the character down into its 3 fundamental components, its head, ribcage, and pelvis, the more extreme the bends and twists we have between them, the more dynamic the pose will feel. And just to demonstrate this concept, I'll add muscles to 2 different poses, one with some twists and bends, and another with none. You'll notice that the pose with even a little bit of twist will make it feel a lot more dynamic. But this is only half the equation. Your poses will really come alive when we take into consideration number 2, which is using the limbs to exaggerate the gesture. Building off of the previous tip, our limbs are an extension of the body. By constantly looking for opportunities to push the gesture, you'll inevitably come up with more dynamic poses. While twists and bends create the foundational movements, the limbs create an opportunity to push the gesture even further. Just as an example, if I went with the same pose we had earlier without the limbs, I would add the limbs so that they exaggerate the force going into the movement, which not only enhances the gesture, but also gives context to the body. But what if I told you could go even further beyond? This last tip is very situational, but if you use it correctly, it can make the most impact. And it's foreshortening. Everyone knows about foreshortening, but not quite how to use it.
Foreshortening happens when we use a wide camera lens, which creates a distortion, making things appear closer or farther than they really are.
But the real reason it's so effective isn't because it exaggerates depth, but because it exaggerates velocity. Because the limbs feel like they're coming at us faster, the speed of the movement is what makes the pose feel more dynamic. But I would recommend to use it with caution because it can be very easy to lose track of the structural and proportional relationships when the foreshortening becomes too distorted. Just as an example, here's the homework of a student I'm working with. While most of our sketches were very solid, the sketches that had foreshortening were a little proportionally off. And so it's always important, if you do decide to use foreshortening, to control how much you exaggerate so it doesn't go overboard. Another thing is also to be aware of whether or not the foreshortening actually matches what's going on in the scene. And now here's a bonus tip, which is to push the acting. So far we've talked about all the techniques on improving your poses, but this one will be a lot more conceptual. Oftentimes, when we sketch and move on to the painting phase too quickly, we forget to take a second look and check if the pose is too generic or uninteresting. For example, when I was sketching out Old Vi, I had her leaning over in a casual pose, but I knew I could push the acting further. In this case, maybe we can have her lean in even more and exaggerate how relaxed her other arm is. This small change made the pose so much more interesting. And these are just a couple of ways we can exaggerate and breathe life into your character poses.